and go over system of systems approach and framework in the context of emergent properties. So we live in a world of systems, and when I first became a systems engineer, it was, when I first got that position, I was like, wow, I did not want to be a systems engineer. I didn't really understand what it was or like the context of systems. And eventually, when you do become a systems engineer, you realize that we live in systems. Everything's a system of some sorts. And even, when you want to build these technologies, these very innovative technologies, it's a system of systems. So you can think of that in the context of um, planes, vehicles, ships, and we're going to discuss buildings. Building information modeling is an industry, a subsector of, um, I'm not sure what it is a subsector of, but that's an industry. And so in their context, they do think of system of systems. So it's a collection of independent systems integrated to achieve a larger, more complex objective. So there's a structure here um, for a building, and most buildings have structures. But if it was just the structure, you would have, you know, some form of your needs, the requirements met on having a building. But again, there are other systems. So SOS's system of system hold emergent properties, not just the sum of all everything, but also emergent properties. So thinking in terms of system of systems is very helpful when it gets to the point of integrating new things into a system, upgrading your system, um, or maintaining your system as well as it degrades. So a building, again, is a quintessential system of systems. Its primary objective is to provide shelter and some form of functionality based on the requirements of the building. If it's a police department versus a condo versus a school versus um, a corporate plaza, there's just going to be corporate, like a re- um, retail store. There's just different needs uh, and different requirements, so that system is going to be different. And the systems within that system of systems, that property is going to be different. So I know I have one friend who works in the finance industry for um, buildings for high grade medical or high grade biology, here in San Diego, companies. So the systems that they hold and the requirements that those types of companies hold and the buildings are very unique. And so um, understanding that building system and the system of systems is important to maintaining it and keeping it going at a at an affordable cost. And usually, in here, we're not talking about stakeholders yet. So in the next uh, session I do on system of systems, this is one, emergent properties. We'll talk about stakeholders and how, depending on that system, you're going to have um, different stakeholders across long periods of time, and that can complicate the management and the communication of what has occurred in the past, as well as what should occur moving forward, what the state of that system is now, and so on. But again, a building is a quintessential system of systems. So you have structures like walls, roofs, mechanical systems like HVAC or plumbing, and then electrical. And then again, you can have specialized systems. So vertical transport, aesthetic designs, landscaping, that's a system within your system. And it has complicated requirements as well that are not very obvious all the time, especially if you're not an expert. Most of these things require some form of expertise. And so if you don't hold that, it's very difficult. Uh, I mean, you just don't want to be in charge of something you don't understand. So again, the utility of a system as system is revealed in emergent properties. So even say a condo building, if you want to go up the stairs and into your home, you're going to go across multiple different systems within that system of systems. You will want to go, through a security system, then through a vehicle transportation system. You'll want it to be illuminated with a lighting system, and this will all be housed within a structural system. So, and then again, we haven't even spoken about stakeholders, but that is just the physical system of systems. And so you have all those various things like lighting, security, vertical transport, structure, which is roofing as well, and we don't think about that because it just flows. But the reality is, it takes a complicated web of uh, transactions and maintenance work orders to make sure that that system of system works functionally. So you get to your room and you get inside that building, or say you want to go into any sort of requirement that a retail store might have for its customers. That is a system of systems. The difference is, and as SAIC Safe was built for HOAs, um, is when, and we're going to talk about this more in stakeholders, but the system of system, it isn't just about the assets. It isn't just about the the physical objects there. There is a complicated, not necessarily, I mean, it is complicated web of requirements, whether they be, mostly surrounded around legal and the interactions of stakeholders with that property, whether that's owners, tenants, managers, vendors, um, uh, consumers, depending on what that building does, what that system of systems purpose is, and depending on those stakeholder, uh, how those stakeholders interact with that property, whether they're the owner, whether they're a renter, how long, what are their, what type of owner, what's the fractional ownership model. Um, it can get complicated. It can get very complicated. And this gets into supply chain management. And probably, Zyke Safe was built for HOAs, but homeowner associations are the base, one of the base layers of American government. And I would guess, probably many other countries around the world is also a base layer. But in the United States, your homeowner association, if you live in one or own in one, is a base layer of government. And then you have your local municipalities, your state government, and the federal government. um, but you have a set of laws that what, and if you're going to live, if you rent in an apartment, you also have a set of uh, laws that you live by. The ownership models on those and the management models on those are a lot simpler, but it's uh, how that's maintained is a complicated string of supply chain management, for an HOA, or for, again, for the government. So we started at the base layer of HOAs being the base layer, but again, once you get into other forms of government, um, the system of system problems, and as far as fractional ownership and fractional management, becomes very complicated because now you have infrastructure, and you have to document that infrastructure. So the hygiene of it over years, and also make sure that everyone's abiding by the governance of that property. And a lot of that governance and stakeholders, I didn't speak about in here. I mostly spoke about the emergent properties, how there are these physical systems, whether it be, if you have a gas for a stove or something, or if you have electricity, or if you have your structure, um, your landscaping, a vertical transport system, a security system, a plumbing system. Uh, these are all things that are systems within your system. And again, for maybe a single family homeowner, it's not very difficult to, because the fractional ownership of that isn't as difficult to manage. But um, HOAs are growing, the number of them, and fractional ownership models are also increasing. So as fractional ownership models increase, the understanding and the communication of maintenance and the documentation of maintenance becomes critical, because you want to document these things as often as possible and then be able to have a history of what occurred that made sense. So, and again, you can talk about a building, you can talk about a in biology, there's also a system of systems. Won't speak about that, but just an interesting framework to think about. And when you talk about property management or asset management, fractionalizing the system of systems and understanding how they work together, uh, how they build the capability for your requirements, getting up safely to your home, that requires the vehicle transport system has to work. You have to be able to see where you're going. So the security system should let you in and should not let other people in who don't have the proper authentication. So um, interesting to think about, and it's really easy to take it for granted, but it's not necessarily so easy to make the magic happen.